Hey everyone, my name is Riley, and I'm about to tell you a story that'll make your jaw drop. I mean, seriously, grab some popcorn because this is gonna be one wild ride. You know how they say karma's a bitch? Well, let me tell you, sometimes she shows up fashionably late but wearing the most expensive designer dress you've ever seen. So picture this. I'm sitting in my tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn, scrolling through Instagram like any other Tuesday night, when I see my sister Vanessa's latest post. There she is, all dolled up in some fancy restaurant in Manhattan, flashing her Cartier watch and that smug smile I've grown to hate. The caption? Living my best life. Blessed boss lady. Family business. Family business. Those two words made my stomach turn faster than expired milk. See, Vanessa and I used to be close. I'm talking sharing clothes, staying up all night talking about boys, the whole 9 yards. But that was before Mom decided that Vanessa was her little princess and I was, well, let's just say I became the family disappointment real quick. Our mom, Patricia Coleman, built Coleman Associates from the ground up. Started as a small accounting firm in Queens back in the 80s. And by the time I was in high school, she had offices in 3 states and was pulling in millions. Mom was a force of nature. I'm talking designer suits, power lunches, and the kind of confidence that could make grown men stutter. Vanessa? She was Mom's carbon copy. Same blonde hair, same piercing blue eyes, same ruthless ambition. Me? I got Dad's brown hair and his gentle heart, which apparently wasn't what Mom was looking for in a successor. When I graduated college with my business degree, I thought for sure I'd have a place at the company. I mean, hello? It's called Coleman Associates, and last time I checked, I was a Coleman too. But, oh boy, was I wrong. Riley, sweetheart, Mom said, during what I thought was going to be my welcome to the company lunch. I think you'd be much happier doing something more creative, maybe teaching or social work. Meanwhile, Vanessa waltzed right into the VP position straight out of her MBA program. No questions asked, no find yourself first speeches, just keys to the executive bathroom and a corner office overlooking Central Park. For 3 years, I watched from the sidelines as Vanessa played queen bee at family dinners, bragging about her latest business conquests while I served tables at a diner in Queens. 3 years of, when are you going to get a real job, Riley? And, your sister closed another $1 million deal today. But here's the thing about being the underdog. You learn to observe. You notice things, like how Mom always seemed tired after her doctor visits, how she'd rub her temples during family dinners, how she started wearing longer sleeves even in summer. The cancer diagnosis hit our family like a freight train. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave her 6 months, maybe 8 if she was lucky. Suddenly, Vanessa was all about spending quality time with Mom, showing up to every appointment, posting heartfelt Instagram stories about family first. But I saw through her act. This wasn't about love. This was about securing her position as the sole heir. During one of our last real conversations, Mom grabbed my hand with those frail fingers and whispered, I made mistakes, Riley. I chose the wrong daughter to trust. I squeezed her hand back, thinking she was just being sentimental. I had no idea she was about to turn both our worlds upside down. If you're enjoying this story so far, make sure to hit that like button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe, because trust me, this is just the beginning of the craziest revenge story you'll ever hear. 2 weeks after Mom's funeral, I'm still wearing black. Not because I'm mourning, though trust me, I am, but because I'm working a double shift at Romano's diner and black hides the stains better. Glamorous, right? The funeral was exactly what you'd expect from a Patricia Coleman production. Fresh orchids flown in from Hawaii, a string quartet, and enough caviar to feed a small country. Vanessa played the grieving daughter perfectly, complete with designer tissues, and that little sob she'd perfected during her college theater electives. Riley, darling, she said after the service, approaching me with that fake sympathy voice she'd mastered. I know this is hard, but we need to talk about the business. Mom left everything to me, obviously, but I want you to know there might be a place for you. Maybe in HR? Or customer service? Customer service. At the company my grandmother helped Mom start. The audacity was mind-blowing. Thanks, but I'll pass, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm doing just fine on my own. She laughed. Not a cruel laugh, just that dismissive little chuckle she'd give when she thought I was being naive. Oh, Riley, You're so stubborn. Just like Dad was. That stung. Dad had been the kindest man I'd ever known, but Mom always made it sound like his gentleness was a weakness. After he died in that car accident when I was 15, it was like she decided I was too much like him to be useful. The next morning, I got the call that changed everything. Ronald Steinberg, Mom's lawyer, the same guy who'd handled our family's legal stuff since before I was born, wanted to see me in his office. "It's about your mother's will," he said over the phone. "There are some complications." Complications? I figured maybe Mom had left me some jewelry or her old photo albums. Something sentimental that Vanessa wouldn't want anyway. Boy, was I wrong. Ronald's office was exactly what you'd expect from a guy who'd been practicing law since the 70s. Dark wood, leather chairs, and enough diplomas on the wall to make you feel intimidated. He looked uncomfortable when I walked in, like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. "Riley, please, sit down," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his massive desk. "What I'm about to tell you is going to come as quite a shock." I settled into the chair, my palms sweating. Did Mom leave me something? Because honestly, I don't need anything. I'm doing fine. "She left you controlling interest in Coleman Associates." I literally laughed. Not a polite chuckle, but a full-on, belly-deep laugh. "I'm sorry, what?" 51% of the company shares. She changed her will 6 months ago, right after her diagnosis. She also left you her penthouse apartment, her investment portfolio, and... He paused, adjusting his glasses. "And a letter." My hands were shaking as I took the envelope. Mom's familiar handwriting on the front simply said, "Riley." Inside, her words hit me like a slap and a hug at the same time. "My dearest Riley, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And hopefully, you're about to understand why I spent years pushing you away. I needed to see who you really were when you had nothing. I needed to know if you'd stay kind, stay honest, stay true to yourself even when the world told you that you weren't enough. Vanessa became everything I thought I wanted in a successor. Ruthless, ambitious, willing to step on anyone to get ahead. But in doing so, she lost her soul. She became someone I created, not someone I could trust. You, my sweet girl, remained yourself. You worked hard, you stayed humble, and you never let bitterness consume you. That's why the company belongs to you now. Not because you're my daughter, but because you're the only one who deserves it. I'm sorry for the years I wasted testing you. I'm sorry for making you feel like you weren't good enough. You were always more than enough. You were everything I should have been. The company is yours now. Fix what I broke. Be better than I was. Love always. Mom." I was crying by the time I finished reading. Ronald handed me a tissue box, probably used to emotional scenes in his office. "There's more," he said gently. "Your mother also left specific instructions. You're to take over as CEO immediately. All current employment contracts are now under your discretion." The weight of what he was saying hit me like a truck. I wasn't just inheriting a company, I was inheriting power over the person who'd spent years making me feel powerless. "What about Vanessa?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "She inherits a trust fund, comfortable but not controlling. And Riley?" He leaned forward. "She doesn't know about any of this yet. Your mother wanted you to handle that conversation personally." I walked out of that office feeling like I was floating, not from happiness, but from pure shock. 3 hours ago, I was slinging hash browns and refilling coffee cups. Now I was about to walk into the most exclusive corporate building in Manhattan as the boss of the woman who'd spent years telling me I wasn't good enough. The irony wasn't lost on me. Mom had spent years making me feel like I was too soft for the business world. But turns out, she was preparing me for the biggest power play of my life. Time to go have a conversation with my dear sister. Walking into Coleman Associates felt like stepping into a museum of my own failures. The marble floors, the crystal chandeliers, the smell of expensive perfume and ambition. It all reminded me of every family dinner where I'd felt like an outsider looking in. The receptionist, a perfectly polished woman named Chloe, looked up from her computer with that practiced smile reserved for people who clearly didn't belong. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Vanessa Coleman," I said, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. "I'm her sister, Riley." "Oh," her expression shifted slightly. "I'm so sorry for your loss. Let me see if she's available." Available, like I was some random client requesting a meeting. But I bit my tongue and waited while she made the call. "She'll see you now. 23rd floor, corner office." The elevator ride felt like it lasted forever. I caught my reflection in the mirrored walls. I looked exactly like what I was. a girl in a thrift store dress about to walk into a world of power suits and platinum credit cards. Vanessa's office was everything I'd expected and more. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, a desk that probably cost more than my yearly rent, and photos of her shaking hands with politicians and celebrities. She was sitting behind that desk like a queen on her throne, typing away on her laptop. "Riley," she said, standing up with that bright smile she'd perfected. "What a surprise! What brings you to my little kingdom?" My little kingdom. The phrase made my stomach turn. "I wanted to talk to you about Mom's will," I said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice dripping with sympathy. "I know this is hard. Trust me. I didn't want to inherit everything either. It's such a huge responsibility. But don't worry. I'll take good care of the company. Mom would want that. She was good. Really good. If I didn't know better, I'd almost believe she was genuinely concerned about my feelings." "Actually," I said, pulling out the will documents Ronald had given me, "there's been a mistake. I think you should read this." She took the papers with a confused smile, probably expecting some minor bequest or sentimental item. I watched her face as she read, saw the exact moment when reality hit her. The color drained from her cheeks, and her hands started shaking. This can't be right," she whispered. "Mom she couldn't have." 51% controlling interest, I said calmly, plus the penthouse, the investment portfolio, and full authority over all company decisions, including employment. She looked up at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw real fear in her eyes. "Riley, this is crazy. You don't know anything about running a business. You work at a diner." "Worked at a diner," I corrected. "I quit this morning." That's when it happened. The moment that would replay in my mind for weeks. Vanessa's fear melted away, replaced by that familiar smugness. She actually laughed and leaned back in her chair. "You think you can just waltz in here and take over? You think a piece of paper makes you qualified to run a multi-million-dollar company?" She stood up, planting her hands on the desk. "Mom cut you off for a reason, Riley. She knew you didn't have what it takes. You're too soft, too naive, too nice." There it was, the mask slipping away to reveal the sister I'd grown to know so well. "You'll run this company into the ground within 6 months, she continued, that smirk growing wider. "And when you do, I'll be there to pick up the pieces. Because at the end of the day, you're still the same little girl who couldn't even get Mom's attention." I stood up slowly, feeling something cold and sharp settling in my chest. "You're right about one thing, Vanessa. I am nice. I always have been. But you know what? Being nice doesn't mean being weak." I walked around the desk, and she actually took a step back. "You want to know what Mom's last words to me were? She said she chose the wrong daughter to trust. Turns out she figured out how to fix that mistake. 'You can't fire me,' she said, but her voice was shaking now. 'I have a contract. I have connections. I built this company's reputation. You built it on Mom's foundation,' I said, moving closer, 'and now it's my foundation. As for your contract,' I smiled, and I knew it wasn't a nice smile. 'Let me introduce you to something called at-will employment and breach of fiduciary duty.' Her face went white. 'What are you talking about?' 'I've been watching you, Vanessa, for years. Did you think I didn't notice the creative accounting? The client payments that went into your personal accounts? The deals you made behind Mom's back?' I was bluffing, but her reaction told me I'd hit something. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. 'You see, being the underdog has advantages,' I continued. 'People talk around you like you're invisible. They mention things they shouldn't, like how you've been skimming money from the Peterson account, or how you promised the Hartwell contract to your boyfriend's firm in exchange for that lovely vacation in the Bahamas. You can't prove any of that,' she whispered. 'Maybe not, but I don't need to prove it to fire you. I just need to want to. And Vanessa,' I leaned in close, 'I really, really want to.' She sank back into her chair, all the fight gone out of her. 'Riley, please. This company is my life. It's all I have.' 'Funny,' I said, heading toward the door. 'That's exactly how I felt when you and Mom made me feel like I was nothing. The difference is, I earned my way back. You're about to learn what it feels like to earn your way from the bottom.' I paused at the door and turned back. 'Oh, and Vanessa, you have until 5 o'clock to clean out your office. Security will escort you out.' I left her sitting there, staring at the will in her hands, probably wondering how her perfect world had just crumbled in the span of 10 minutes. The funny thing about revenge? It doesn't feel how you think it will. I thought I'd feel triumphant, powerful, maybe even a little guilty. Instead, I felt empty, like I'd won a game I never really wanted to play. But that feeling wouldn't last long, because what I discovered in Vanessa's office after she left would change everything I thought I knew about my family, my sister, and myself. After Vanessa left that day, and trust me, the security escort was every bit as humiliating as I'd hoped, I found myself alone in what was now my office. The silence felt heavy, like the room itself was holding its breath. I slumped into the chair behind the massive desk, still trying to process what had just happened. 24 hours ago, I was worried about making rent. Now I was sitting in a corner office worth more than most people's houses, with the power to make or break careers. The irony wasn't lost on me. Mom had always said I was too emotional to handle business. Yet here I was, having just delivered the coldest, most calculated takedown of my life. I was about to call it a day when I noticed something Vanessa had left behind, a small silver key sitting on the desk. It looked like it belonged to a filing cabinet or maybe a desk drawer. Curious, I started checking drawers, and sure enough, it opened the bottom drawer of the desk. What I found inside made my blood run cold. Files, lots of them, all labeled with client names I recognized from company reports. But these weren't official company files. These were copies, hidden away like some kind of insurance policy. I opened the first one, marked Hartwell Industries, and my jaw dropped. It contained emails between Vanessa and someone named Derek Martinez at a competing firm. The emails detailed how Vanessa had been feeding client information to Derek's company in exchange for kickbacks that went straight into her personal account. But it got worse. So much worse. The next file contained falsified audit reports. Vanessa had been systematically embezzling money from client accounts, then covering it up by manipulating the books. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars over the past 3 years. My hands were shaking as I opened file after file. Each one revealed another layer of corruption. Another way Vanessa had been slowly bleeding the company dry while presenting herself as the perfect successor. But the file that made me physically sick was labeled Patricia Coleman, personal. Inside were medical records. Mom's medical records. But not just any records. These were from 2 years ago. 2 years before her official diagnosis. According to these documents, Mom had suspected something was wrong with the company's finances. She'd been investigating discrepancies and had discovered some of Vanessa's schemes. The stress of the discovery, combined with her declining health, had triggered a heart episode that landed her in the hospital. There was a note in Mom's handwriting. Vanessa thinks I don't know. I'm going to give her a chance to confess and make it right. If she doesn't, I'll have no choice but to act. But the most damning piece was a recorded conversation on a small digital recorder. I pressed play with trembling fingers. I know what you've been doing, Vanessa. Mom's voice, weak but firm. I don't know what you're talking about, Mom. Vanessa's voice, perfectly innocent. The Hartwell account. The Peterson discrepancies. The payments to Derek Martinez. Should I continue? A long pause. Then Vanessa's voice, different now, cold. You can't prove anything. I can prove everything. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Nothing. Because you're not going to do anything about it either. And why is that? Because if you expose me, it destroys the company. All those employees lose their jobs. All those clients lose their trust. You'd rather protect your precious legacy than admit you raised a daughter who's smarter than you are. Smarter? Is that what you call stealing from the people who trusted us? I call it taking what I deserve. You built this company, but I'm the one who's been running it. I'm the one who brings in the big clients. I'm the one who makes the deals. You just sit in your ivory tower and pretend you're still relevant. The recording ended there, but there was another note from Mom. She's right about one thing. I can't expose her without destroying everything I've built, but I can make sure she never gets the chance to destroy it herself. I sat there staring at the recorder, pieces finally clicking into place. Mom hadn't cut me off because she thought I was weak. She'd cut me off to protect me from getting caught up in Vanessa's web of corruption. And the will? That wasn't just about giving me the company. It was about giving me the power to clean up the mess without destroying the family name. I was still processing all of this when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at Murphy's Bar on 42nd Street. Come alone. D. Derek Martinez, Vanessa's partner in crime. My first instinct was to ignore it. My second was to call the police. But my third instinct, the one that won out, was curiosity. What did Derek want? And more importantly, what did he know that I didn't? Murphy's bar was exactly the kind of place you'd expect for a clandestine meeting. Dark, crowded, and loud enough that nobody would overhear a conversation. I spotted Derek immediately. He looked exactly like the kind of guy Vanessa would work with. Expensive suit, perfect hair, and the kind of smile that made you want to count your fingers after a handshake. "Riley Coleman," he said, standing up as I approached. "I've heard so much about you." "I'm sure you have," I said, not bothering to hide my disgust. "What do you want?" "To make you an offer," he said, signaling the bartender. "Drink? I'm good." "Talk." He laughed like he was dealing with a child. "I like you. You're direct. Very different from your sister." "My sister's not your concern anymore." "Actually, she is. You see, Riley, Vanessa and I had agreements, contracts, business arrangements that went far beyond what you found in those files." My blood went cold. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that your sister promised me a 50% stake in Coleman Associates in exchange for my continued silence about her creative accounting methods." I stared at him, my mind racing. She didn't have the authority to make that deal. She thought she did. She was convinced she was inheriting everything. Now that she's not, he shrugged. "Well, let's just say I'm very interested in making a similar arrangement with the new management. You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a partnership. The alternative is that I go public with everything I know about your family's business practices, your mother's knowledge of the embezzlement, your sister's schemes, the fact that Coleman and Associates has been built on a foundation of fraud for the past 3 years." I felt sick. Even from beyond the grave, Vanessa was still trying to destroy everything. "I need time to think about this," I said, standing up. "Of course, but not too much time. I'll give you 48 hours. After that, I start making phone calls to some very interested journalists." I walked out of that bar feeling like the walls were closing in. I'd thought firing Vanessa was the end of the story. Turns out, it was just the beginning. But if Derek Martinez thought he could intimidate me the way he'd intimidated my sister, he was about to learn that underestimating a Coleman woman was a very dangerous mistake. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Derek's smug face and heard his threat echoing in my head. 48 hours to decide whether to hand over half my inheritance to a blackmailer or watch him destroy everything Mom had built. By morning, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to be anyone's victim. I called in sick to my own company. Yeah, the irony wasn't lost on me, and spent the day doing research. If Derek thought he could play hardball with me, he was about to learn that I'd been watching from the sidelines for years, picking up lessons he didn't even know he was teaching. First stop, the public library. Yeah, I know, old school. But sometimes the best research happens offline. I spent hours digging through business records, court documents, and newspaper archives. Derek Martinez wasn't just some small-time schemer. He was a player in a much bigger game. His company, Martinez Consulting, had been involved in 3 major corporate scandals in the past 5 years. Each time he'd managed to walk away clean while his partners took the fall. The pattern was always the same. He'd infiltrate a company, extract valuable information, then disappear just before the house of cards collapsed. But here's what he didn't count on. I wasn't Vanessa. I wasn't desperate for approval or blinded by ambition. I was just pissed off. By evening, I had a plan. It wasn't pretty, and it definitely wasn't nice, but it was thorough. I called Ronald Steinberg and asked him to meet me at the office early the next morning. "Riley," he said when he saw me, "you look terrible. Are you all right?" "I'm about to be," I said, sliding a folder across his desk. "I need you to look at these documents and tell me if what I'm thinking is legal." He opened the folder and his eyebrows shot up. "Where did you get these?" "Vanessa's secret files. Apparently she kept records of all her illegal activities. I'm guessing she thought it would protect her somehow." "This is extensive," he said, flipping through the pages. "We're talking about multiple felonies here. Embezzlement, fraud, tax evasion. Riley, this could put her in prison." "That's not what I want," I said quickly. "I want to use it to protect the company. Someone else knows about this, and they're trying to blackmail me." I told him about Derek's offer. Ronald's face grew darker with each detail. "He's made a crucial mistake," Ronald said finally. "By blackmailing you, he's made himself an accessory after the fact. We can use that." "How?" "We set up a meeting, record the conversation, get him to admit what he's doing. Then we turn the tables. And if he doesn't take the bait," Ronald smiled grimly, "then we remind him that there are worse things than bad publicity, like prison." The next morning I called Derek. "I've made my decision," I told him. "I'll give you 25% of the company. but I want to negotiate the terms. I said 50%, he replied, and I'm offering 25. Take it or leave it. There was a long pause. Fine, but I want it in writing. Meet me at my office tonight at 8. I'll be there. I hung up and turned to Ronald, who was setting up a recording device in my purse. You sure about this? He asked. Absolutely not, I said, but I'm doing it anyway. Derek's office was in one of those sleek downtown buildings that screamed, I'm important, but probably corrupt. The kind of place where people wore expensive suits to hide their cheap souls. Riley, Derek greeted me like we were old friends. I'm so glad you came to your senses. 25% is a reasonable starting point. Starting point? Well, naturally. As I become more involved in the company's operations, I'll expect my share to increase accordingly. I almost laughed. The guy was so arrogant he was admitting to his plan to gradually take over the entire company. About that, I said, pulling out a contract Ronald had prepared. I want to make sure I understand exactly what you're asking for. It's simple, Derek said, not bothering to read the document. I keep quiet about your sister's embezzlement, and you give me a piece of the pie. Everyone wins. So you're saying you'll use your knowledge of criminal activity to extort ownership of my company? I wouldn't put it quite so bluntly, but yes, that's the arrangement. And if I refuse, then I make some phone calls. The FBI is very interested in corporate fraud these days. I'm sure they'd love to hear about how Patricia Coleman knowingly covered up her daughter's crimes to protect her legacy. I nodded thoughtfully. That's interesting. Tell me more about these phone calls you'd make. For the next 20 minutes, Derek laid out his entire plan in detail. How he'd been working with Vanessa for years. How he'd documented everything as insurance. How he'd use the information to destroy Coleman Associates if I didn't cooperate. He was so busy gloating that he didn't notice me checking my phone to make sure the recording app was still running. Well, I said finally, I think I've heard enough. Excellent. So we have a deal? Actually, Derek, I have a better offer for you. His smile faltered. What kind of offer? I pulled out my phone and played back the last 5 minutes of our conversation. His face went white as he heard his own voice discussing blackmail and extortion. Here's the deal, I said calmly. You're going to return every dollar you stole from Coleman Associates. You're going to sign a statement admitting to your crimes. And you're going to disappear from my life forever. You can't prove... I can prove everything. I have Vanessa's files. I have this recording. And I have a very good lawyer who's just dying to file charges against you. Derek's composure cracked completely. You don't understand. I have connections. I have friends in high places. I can destroy you. Maybe. But you'll be doing it from prison. Because that recording is already backed up in 3 different locations. And if anything happens to me, it goes straight to the FBI. He stared at me for a long moment, probably trying to figure out if I was bluffing. I wasn't. What do you want? He asked finally. I want you to write a check for $847,000. That's the amount you stole, plus interest. I want you to sign a confession, and I want you to get the hell out of my city. And if I do all that, then I don't destroy your life. Today, he wrote the check with shaking hands, signed the confession like he was signing his own death warrant, and walked out of his office a broken man. I sat there for a moment, holding the check and the signed confession, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Powerful. Not in a cruel way, but in a way that felt right. Like I was finally standing up for myself and everyone else who'd been stepped on by people like Derek and Vanessa. But my victory celebration was short-lived, because when I got home that night, I found Vanessa waiting outside my apartment building, and she looked like she had nothing left to lose. We need to talk, Vanessa said, standing up from the steps of my building. She looked different, smaller somehow, like defeat had physically shrunk her. Her perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual power suit. I think we've said enough to each other, I replied, trying to walk past her. Riley, please. She grabbed my arm, and I was shocked to feel her hand shaking. I know you hate me. I know you think I'm this terrible person, but there are things you don't understand. Things about Mom, about me, about everything. Against my better judgment, I stopped. Maybe it was the vulnerability in her voice, or maybe I was just curious to hear what excuse she'd come up with this time. You have 5 minutes, I said, unlocking the door to my building. We rode the elevator in silence. My studio apartment had never felt smaller than it did with Vanessa in it. She looked around like she was seeing how the other half lived for the first time. I found Derek's confession in your office, she said finally, along with all my files. And And I know you could have destroyed me completely, but you didn't. You just fired me. I shrugged. I'm not vindictive. Yes, you are, she said, and for the first time in years she wasn't saying it like an insult. You're vindictive and smart and ruthless when you need to be. You're exactly what Mom needed you to be. I stared at her. What are you talking about? Vanessa sat down heavily on my couch, looking more exhausted than I'd ever seen her. Riley, do you remember when Dad died? The question caught me off guard. Of course I remember. Do you remember how Mom changed afterward? I thought back to those dark months after the accident. Mom had thrown herself into work even more obsessively than before, barely speaking to either of us unless it was about business or school. She got colder, I said slowly. She got scared, Vanessa corrected. She told me once that losing Dad made her realize how fragile everything was. The company, our family, our security. She became obsessed with making sure we could survive anything. What does this have to do with everything? Vanessa interrupted, then took a deep breath. Mom didn't cut you off because she thought you were weak, Riley. She cut you off because she knew you were strong enough to survive on your own, strong enough to build character outside of her influence. I felt like I was hearing a foreign language. That doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense if you think like Mom. She knew I was ambitious and ruthless, but she also knew those traits would make me vulnerable to corruption. So she gave me everything I wanted and waited to see what I'd do with it. And what did you do with it? Vanessa's laugh was bitter. I proved her right. I became exactly the kind of person she was afraid I'd become. Greedy, entitled, willing to cheat and steal to get ahead. She pulled something out of her purse. A letter, similar to the one Mom had left me. She left me this too, Vanessa said, handing it over. I didn't read it until after you fired me. I was too angry. I unfolded the letter, recognizing Mom's handwriting. My dearest Vanessa, by now you know that I've left the company to Riley. I imagine you're furious, confused, and probably planning your revenge. But before you do something you'll regret, I need you to understand why. I didn't give Riley the company because I loved her more. I gave it to her because she earned it. Not through business acumen or ruthless ambition, but through something much more valuable: integrity. You have all the skills to be a great businesswoman. You're smart, driven, and incredibly talented. But somewhere along the way, you forgot that success without honor is just expensive failure. I enabled your worst impulses because I thought that's what strength looked like. I was wrong. Real strength is doing the right thing, even when it costs you everything. Riley learned that lesson on her own. You're going to have to learn it the hard way. But here's the thing about your sister that you've never understood. She's not weak because she's kind. She's powerful because she chooses kindness even when she has the power to be cruel. If you're reading this, it means you've probably lost everything you thought mattered. Good. Now you can start over and figure out what actually does matter. Riley will need help rebuilding what you damaged. She'll need someone who understands the business side, but has learned the value of doing things right. She'll need a partner, not a competitor. The question is, are you ready to be that person? Love always, Mom P.S. If you're wondering how I knew about Derek and the embezzlement, you should know that Ronald has been keeping me informed of everything. I may have been sick, but I wasn't blind. I read the letter twice, my hand shaking. When I looked up, Vanessa was crying. Not the pretty, controlled tears she'd perfected for public consumption, but ugly, honest sobs. She knew, Vanessa whispered. She knew everything, and she let me think I was getting away with it. She let me destroy myself. Why? I asked, though I was starting to understand. Because she knew that was the only way I'd learn. She knew I was too arrogant to listen to lectures or warnings. I had to fall completely before I'd be willing to change. We sat in silence for a few minutes. I was trying to process this new version of events, this idea that Mom had been playing a much longer game than any of us realized. So what now? I asked finally. Now I ask you for something I've never asked for in my life, Vanessa said, looking directly at me. I ask for a second chance. Vanessa, not a handout, she continued quickly. Not a position I haven't earned. I want to start over, from the bottom. I want to prove that I can be the person Mom believed I could become. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or hidden agenda. But all I saw was someone who'd lost everything and was finally ready to figure out who she really was, underneath all the ambition and entitlement. You'd really be willing to start from the bottom, answer phones, file papers, make coffee? I'd be willing to clean toilets if that's what it took, she said, and I believed her. And the money you stole? already transferred back to the company accounts, every penny, plus interest. I was quiet for a long moment, weighing my options. The smart thing would be to send her away, to never trust her again. But something Mom had written in my letter came back to me. Be better than I was. There's going to be conditions, I said finally. Anything. You start as an entry-level accountant. You report to me, not the department head. You get no special treatment because you're my sister. One mistake, one hint that you're falling back into old patterns, and you're gone permanently. Understood. And Vanessa, I meant what I said about starting over. As far as I'm concerned, the person who stole from this company and betrayed Mom's trust is dead. If you want to work for me, you'll have to prove you're someone different now. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Thank you, Riley. I know I don't deserve this. You're right, you don't. But maybe that's exactly why Mom set things up this way. She knew I'd be the kind of person who'd give you a chance to earn what you couldn't steal. After Vanessa left that night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at Mom's letters and trying to understand the incredible complexity of what she'd orchestrated. She hadn't just left me a company, she'd left me a test of my own character. The question was, would I pass it? But that would have to wait until tomorrow, because in a few hours, I had to walk into Coleman Associates as its CEO for the first time, ready to clean up the mess my family had created, and somehow build something better from the ashes. No pressure, right? 3 months later, I was sitting in what used to be Vanessa's office, now my office, reviewing quarterly reports when my assistant knocked on the door. Ms. Coleman, there's someone here to see you. She says she's from the New York Business Journal. My stomach dropped. Ever since I'd taken over, I'd been dreading this moment. The press attention, the questions about the sudden leadership change, the inevitable speculation about what had really happened to Vanessa. Send her in, I said, straightening my blazer. Time to face the music. The woman who walked in wasn't what I expected. Instead of the sharp-suited, aggressive journalist I'd imagined, she was probably in her 40s, with kind eyes and a genuine smile. Ms. Coleman, I'm Sarah Chen from the Business Journal. Thank you for agreeing to see me. I didn't exactly agree, I said, gesturing for her to sit. But I'm here. She laughed. Fair enough. I'll be direct. There's been a lot of speculation about the changes at Coleman Associates. New CEO, former VP leaving suddenly, major client wins in the past quarter. People want to know what's really going on. What do you want to know? Let's start with the obvious question. 3 months ago, you were working at a diner in Queens. Now you're running a multi-million-dollar company. How does that happen? I'd practiced this answer a dozen times, but it still felt surreal saying it out loud. My mother left me the company in her will. It was unexpected. And your sister. Vanessa chose to pursue other opportunities. Sarah Chen wasn't buying it. Other opportunities? She went from VP to entry-level accountant at her own family's company. That's quite a career change. I glanced through the glass wall of my office to where Vanessa was sitting at a desk in the accounting department, methodically working through a stack of invoices. She'd been there every day for 3 months, arriving early, staying late, never complaining. Sometimes people decide they want to learn the business from the ground up, I said carefully. Is that what happened? You'd have to ask her. Sarah made some notes, then looked up at me with those sharp eyes. Can I ask you something off the record? You can ask. I might not answer. This whole situation, you taking over, your sister starting over, the dramatic turnaround in company performance, it feels like there's a bigger story here. Like maybe Patricia Coleman orchestrated something more complex than a simple inheritance. I stared at her for a moment. Why would you think that? Because I've been covering business for 15 years, and I've never seen a transition this smooth after such a dramatic change in leadership. Usually there's chaos, lawsuits, family drama played out in public. But here, it's like everyone knew exactly what they were supposed to do. She was good, really good. My mother was a very thorough planner, I said finally. I'm sure she was. But that's not the whole story, is it? Before I could answer, there was another knock on my door. Vanessa poked her head in. Riley, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a problem with the Morrison account. The numbers aren't adding up, and I think... She stopped when she saw Sarah. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were in a meeting. It's fine, I said. This is Sarah Chen from the Business Journal. Sarah, this is Vanessa Coleman, our senior accountant. Sarah's eyebrows went up. Senior accountant? I thought you said she was entry level. Vanessa looked between us, clearly realizing she'd walked into something. She was promoted last month, I said. Merit-based advancement. In 3 months she went from VP to entry level to senior accountant? It's been a busy 3 months, Vanessa said dryly. Sarah laughed despite herself. Would you be willing to answer a few questions, Ms. Coleman? Vanessa looked at me, and I nodded. Sure, Vanessa said, sitting down. Though I'm not sure how interesting my story is. Why don't you let me be the judge of that? What made you decide to start over in a junior position? Vanessa was quiet for a moment, and I could see her choosing her words carefully. I realized I'd been promoted beyond my competence, she said finally. I thought I knew everything about the business, but I'd never actually learned the fundamentals. So I asked Riley if I could start over and do it right this time. That must have been humbling. Humbling doesn't begin to cover it, Vanessa said with a self-deprecating smile. Do you know how hard it is to ask your little sister for a job when you used to be her boss? Why did you do it? Vanessa glanced at me, then back at Sarah. Because I'd rather be a good accountant than a terrible executive, and because my sister is building something here that I want to be part of. What kind of something? A company that actually cares about its employees and clients, I said. We've implemented profit sharing, increased our pro bono work, and started a mentorship program for young professionals from underprivileged backgrounds. All in 3 months? Like I said, it's been busy. Sarah was scribbling notes furiously. And the financial performance? Up 23% from last quarter, Vanessa said. Turns out when you treat people well and do good work, they want to do business with you. Revolutionary concept, Sarah said with a smile. After Sarah left, Vanessa lingered in my office. Think she bought it? She asked. The part about you voluntarily starting over? Probably not. But she doesn't need to know the whole truth. No, she doesn't. Vanessa sat down across from my desk. Riley, can I ask you something? Shoot. Do you ever regret it? Giving me a second chance? I thought about it seriously. Ask me in a year. But so far, no. You've been the hardest working person in this building. I have a lot to make up for. Yeah, you do, but you're doing it. She smiled. A real smile. Not the fake one she used to wear. You know what's funny? I'm happier now than I was when I was VP, even though I'm making a fraction of the money and have no real authority. Why do you think that is? Because for the first time in my life, I'm earning what I have, and because I'm working for someone I actually respect. Don't get sappy on me, Vanessa. Too late. I'm already there. After she left, I sat alone in my office, looking out at the city skyline. 3 months ago, I'd thought this story was about revenge, about proving that the underdog could win, that nice girls could finish first. But it wasn't about any of that. It was about something Mom had tried to teach us both, that real power isn't about what you can take from others. It's about what you can build together. Vanessa was rebuilding herself from the ground up. I was rebuilding the company from the inside out. And somewhere, I hoped Mom was looking down at us and thinking that maybe, finally, we'd learned the lessons she'd been trying to teach us all along. But our story wasn't over yet. Because that afternoon, I got a call that would test everything we'd built and everything we'd learned in ways we never could have imagined. Riley, you need to see this, Vanessa said, bursting into my office with a laptop in her hands. Her face was pale and her voice was shaking. What's wrong? She set the laptop on my desk and turned it toward me. On the screen was a news article from a financial blog. Coleman Associates under federal investigation for historic embezzlement scheme. My blood turned to ice as I read the headline. What the hell? It gets worse, Vanessa said, scrolling down. Look at the quotes. The article was full of anonymous sources claiming that Coleman Associates had been systematically defrauding clients for years. Worse, it suggested that the recent leadership change was an attempt to cover up the crimes. This is Derek, I said immediately. He's trying to destroy us because we wouldn't let him blackmail us. It has to be. But Riley, look at this part. She pointed to a paragraph near the bottom. They're claiming that Patricia Coleman was the mastermind of the whole operation, and that you inherited a criminal enterprise. I felt sick. Everything we'd worked for, everything Mom had built, was being painted as a lie. What do we do? Vanessa asked. Before I could answer, my phone rang. Ronald Steinberg. Riley, have you seen the article? Yeah, we're looking at it now. It's bad. I've already gotten calls from 3 reporters and someone from the FBI wanting to schedule a meeting. The FBI? Don't panic. This is exactly what we prepared for. Remember, we have Derek's confession, Vanessa's evidence, and a clear timeline showing when the crimes occurred and when they stopped. But they're saying Mom knew about everything, which is why we need to get ahead of this. I'm calling a press conference for tomorrow morning. We're going to tell the truth, all of it. After I hung up, Vanessa and I sat in stunned silence. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "For what? For all of this. If I hadn't been so greedy, so stupid." "Stop." I looked at her seriously. "We're not going backward. We knew this might happen. Now we deal with it." "How?" "By doing what Mom taught us. We tell the truth, and we trust that justice will win out." The next morning, our conference room was packed with reporters, cameras, and enough tension to power the building. I sat at the head of the table with Ronald on one side and Vanessa on the other. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "I know there are questions about recent allegations regarding Coleman Associates. I'm here to provide you with the complete truth. For the next hour, I laid out everything. Vanessa's embezzlement scheme, Derek's blackmail attempts, Mom's knowledge of the crimes and her decision to handle them privately, the evidence we'd gathered, the money we'd returned to clients. So you're admitting that crimes were committed at your company?" one reporter asked. "I'm admitting that my sister made terrible choices that hurt our clients and betrayed our family's trust," I said. "But I'm also telling you that those crimes stopped the moment I took over, and that we've made full restitution to everyone who was harmed." "Ms. Coleman," another reporter called out, "why should anyone trust a company that covered up criminal activity?" Before I could answer, Vanessa leaned toward the microphone. "Because we're not the same company we were 6 months ago," she said. "Because we've learned that trust isn't something you inherit. It's something you earn. And because sometimes the best thing that can happen to a company is to have its worst instincts exposed and eliminated." "Are you saying you're grateful to have been caught?" "I'm saying I'm grateful for the chance to make things right. And I'm grateful to work for someone who values integrity over profit." After the press conference, we waited. The FBI meeting turned out to be routine. They'd already done their homework and confirmed that the crimes had ended when I took over. Derek's confession helped, but what really saved us was the clear evidence that we'd voluntarily returned the stolen money and implemented new safeguards. The media coverage was mixed. Some outlets praised our transparency and the steps we'd taken to reform the company. Others questioned whether we could be trusted. But gradually, something interesting happened. Clients started calling, not to cancel their contracts, but to express support. Employees who'd been worried about their jobs realized that we'd protected them by being honest about the problems. New businesses started reaching out, wanting to work with a company that had proven it would do the right thing, even when it was costly. 6 months later, Sarah Chen returned for a follow-up interview. "So," she said, settling into the same chair she'd occupied during our first meeting, "how do you feel about the fact that your company is more successful now than it was before the scandal?" "Honestly, shocked," I admitted. "I thought telling the truth would destroy us. What do you think saved you?" I glanced over at Vanessa, who was training our newest intern with the same patience someone had once shown her. "I think people want to believe that redemption is possible," I said. "That people can change, that companies can change, that mistakes don't have to be permanent." "And do you think your sister has changed?" "Ask me in 10 years. But so far she's been the best employee I have. She seems happy." "She is. We both are. Turns out there's something to be said for building something you can actually be proud of." Sarah smiled. "One last question. If you could go back and change how everything happened, would you?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. Would I change the years of feeling rejected? The pain of watching Vanessa succeed while I struggled? The heartbreak of Mom's death? The terror of almost losing everything to Derek's blackmail? "No," I said finally. "I wouldn't change any of it. Because all of that pain, all of those struggles, they taught me something I never could have learned any other way, which is that real success isn't about what you achieve for yourself. It's about what you build for others. And sometimes the most broken people are the ones who become the best at fixing things." After Sarah left, I stood at my office window looking down at the street. Vanessa appeared beside me, both of us watching the city bustle below. "Do you think Mom would be proud of us?" she asked. "I think Mom would be proud that we finally figured out what she was trying to teach us, which was that the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's becoming someone they could never hurt." Vanessa smiled. Deep thoughts for a Friday afternoon. "Yeah, well, I'm a deep person now, CEO and everything. Don't let it go to your head, boss." I laughed, and it felt good. Real good. Because for the first time in my life, I knew exactly who I was. Riley Coleman, CEO of a company that had been broken and rebuilt into something better. Sister to someone who'd lost everything and found herself. Daughter of a woman who'd orchestrated the most complex lesson in love, justice, and redemption I'd ever seen. And if that wasn't worth a celebration, I didn't know what was. So here's my message to everyone who's been following this crazy journey. If you're the underdog, if you feel like you're not good enough, if someone's been telling you that you don't have what it takes, don't give up. Sometimes the people who count you out are just making room for you to prove them wrong. Thanks for sticking with me through this wild ride. Don't forget to like this video, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and subscribe for more stories that prove life is stranger than fiction. Trust me, if my family taught me anything, it's that the best stories are the ones nobody sees coming. Until next time, this is Riley Coleman, reminding you that sometimes the best inheritance isn't money or property. It's the chance to become the person you were always meant to be.